Jeremie, you and I met at Reagan Airport. We were both catching a cab. We realized to the same hotel, got in, and we, exchanged pleasantries and all that stuff. You asked me what I do for a living. I said, I'm a podcast producer. I asked you what you're doing, and you gave me the most amazing answer. And after you told me about Podcasthon, I was like, can I get in on that? Tell me about Podcasthon. What is this idea?
Well, thanks a lot. And indeed, you're probably the first North American people to whom I could talk about this initiative. Because, sorry for my French accent, it all started in France and French-speaking countries. So what it is about, basically, the idea there is to convince as many podcasters as we can to dedicate one episode of their show to a charity of their choice. And that's a very specific point, an important point, to do that in a coordinated effort, all together simultaneously, to create a mass effect, to create a ripple effect of positive and inspiring audio content. So you need to imagine that next March, probably around 1,500 podcasters worldwide will release one episode featuring a charity of their choice, so highlighting a cause that they care about, and they do that all together, so that will create this effect. That's what is Podcasthon, just to raise awareness. There is no money at stake, no financial engagement. We just ask podcasters to offer the mic to their audience.
That was my first question in the cab, was what's in it for you? And you were saying, look, I've just gotten to a point where I can do this. Briefly tell me about the first Podcasthon. You mentioned it was in France, the first iteration, and how it went.
Yeah, I'm a French citizen living in Montreal in Canada, and that was easier for me to start with my French network. So we had this idea in mind. We were not sure it was a good idea, so we started to talk about that with a few French-speaking French podcasters, and then somehow we fine-tuned the formula with them. The first edition took place in March 2023 with 300 podcasters at the time. Which was quite a nice surprise because we were expecting maybe 100 maximum for our first edition, and there was a sheer wave of enthusiasm. It was great energy with this first edition. So we decided to keep on and have a second one to open it to French-speaking countries, including Belgium, Switzerland, Quebec in Canada, not a country but a region, province, and now we are starting to extend it to English-speaking podcasters. So in the US, in the UK, in Australia, and the rest of Canada for sure, and many other countries.
And you have a website, podcasthon.org, so you can start to see some of the interest that you're generating within the podcast industry. How's it going?
So far, so good. It's a great surprise. I can give you the figures. We have exceeded the milestone of 1,000 podcasters. It's 1,100 something. Coming from more than 40 countries so far. Well, most of them are just with one or two podcasters, but the bulk of it is coming from US. USA are the first provider of podcasters now, with over 300 and something. Then France and UK. So it's a great surprise to see that. And a relief too, because we were not sure about the success of this initiative elsewhere than in French-speaking countries. So yeah, a lot of enthusiasm from fellow podcasters in the US, in UK, in Australia, in South Africa, in many countries. We have podcasters from New Zealand, from everywhere in the world. So that's really amazing. And every day, many more are coming. In average, 15 per day, new registrants. So that's great. And probably we will exceed the 1,500 podcasters in March.
Fantastic. And that's what podcasters can do right now, is go to that website and register. And that's simply indicating, I'm going to do this. Third week of March, right? 2025.
Exactly. That's a very straightforward process. It takes probably 90 seconds. Just have, as a podcaster, to fill the form, giving us information about the name of your podcast, your cover. You just have to upload your cover, a few details about the URLs of your podcast, and also, for example, your social networks, a short description, the one you can have on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You don't have to figure out something different. And from there, we will display your cover and your details on our podcast, on our website. Sorry. So anyone now can go on www.podcasthon.org and see that's a public list. All registered podcasters, they are all there, either in French or in English. You can choose, and you have the full list. And we would be pleased to have yours if you are listeners and you're watching us on YouTube now. We could have yours in a few minutes if you can take those 90 seconds.
Perfect. And I mean, we've seen this on social media, right? You and I are both in Canada. And for example, there's Bell Let's Talk Day, which is a mental health awareness day. And everyone gets on X or gets on Instagram and they use the same hashtag. And different countries have different variations of that. With podcasts, it's a little bit different. I like to think of social media as wide, but not very deep, right? Because you spend a few seconds at most engaging.
Yeah.
Podcasts, maybe not quite as wide, but awfully deep because people are having 20, 30, 40, 50, 60-minute conversations.
Exactly.
Why does it work for podcasts, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we figured out that podcasting is probably the best medium to convey emotion, to tell stories. I mean, you guys, podcasters, are great storytellers. And that's on the one hand. And on the other hand, all those charities, wherever in the world they are, whatever the causes they are supporting, could be very large NGO to very local charity. They all need to connect with a larger audience. They all need to enlarge their circle of supporters. And when I'm saying supporters, I mean potential future donors, potential future volunteers, or whatever else. And we know, and it doesn't, when you're asking for donation, it's really rare that anyone is, saying, okay, yes, I will do it right now. Especially if you don't know the charity. It takes time, to check if it's a serious charity or to connect emotionally with this charity. So through a podcast episode, and as you said, it could be 1 hour. I mean, you have 1 hour of nuanced speech. You can go into details. You can introduce your challenges. You can introduce whatever you're doing on the ground. And at the end of the day, at the end of the episode, if you are listeners, something will remain. A memory, an emotion. And the next time you will hear about this charity, or maybe because you would have subscribed on their social networks or on their newsletter, you will be much more connected and maybe keen to either donate or share the content, or why not becoming a volunteer. So that's what I'm saying when I'm saying enlarging the circle of supporters, and they need that.
Third week of March, any podcaster, any charity of your choice, any format. A lot would be interview format, but it doesn't have to be. It could be solo stories. For example, I've lost both my best friend and my mom to cancer. My charity of choice is going to be cancer. We'll do an interview, but it could be a solo episode telling those stories. Yeah.
Exactly. So that would be the 15th of March, it's mid-March, from the 15th of March to the 21st, a span of 7 days during which any podcaster can relive their episodes. Could be Monday or Tuesday, whatever the day you pick up. And the format is completely up to the to the podcasters. Most of the time it's an interview with a representative of a charity, but we are open to any kind of format. You mentioned a solo at the mic, could be also an audio report. We had that a few times during the first edition, meaning you take your mic and you go directly on the ground with a charity, and then you interview people there, and you mixing just like you would do on the radio, for example. So I mean, as you understood, the concept is to raise awareness on charity, and you can unleash your creativity. You can do whatever your talent is. Do whatever you think is best for you as podcaster and for the charity you want to promote.
Thanks for your time, Jeremie. I'm glad we shared that cab.
It was my pleasure.